So recently I did a video on this channel about what's going on in El Salvador. I talked about the viral video that is reportedly, according to the American news media, very controversial, of a prison transfer of about 2,000 inmates, and some of the footage looked like this.
It looks like a sea of skin and tattoos. These images, released by El Salvador's government, shows the transfer of about 2,000 inmates, stripped to their shorts and with their heads shaved, to what's been dubbed the country's new mega prison. It just opened. It's believed to be the largest prison in the Americas, with a capacity for 40,000 people, and it's the latest step in a controversial crackdown on crime that's caused the country's prison population to soar.
Now, I said in that video, and I will make it clear right here, that this is only controversial to white progressives in the United States of America, because in El Salvador, these specific policies, and the president, I believe, of El Salvador in this regard, have about a 92% approval rating. And one of the reasons why is because El Salvador was an absolute hellscape, including a year specifically where more than 0.1% of their population was murdered in a single year. And again, this would have made them the most murderous place in the entire world. And obviously, when you have such a dramatic crime problem, far more dramatic than anything we've ever seen in the United States of America, that is going to result in a dramatic response. And this whole idea that the real issue is poverty and how we have to arrest poverty never made any sense. And it's especially shown to be a failure by the fact that these dramatic crime waves happened after two consecutive leftist presidents came into power talking about how they were going to arrest poverty. However, our local media, our American media, has still been critical. All these NGOs and human rights groups have been really upset because they have decided to double down on this tough on crime approach, and they've essentially churned El Salvador from a place that was the most dangerous in the world, again, 0.1% of their population being murdered in a single year, to safer than most American cities, where they have a population of about 6 million and only have about 400 murders. Now, I said my piece on this topic. I showed you the numbers in this previous video that I highly recommend you watch, and you guys gave me such an amazing response. However, now the president of El Salvador has stepped up to the plate and he's answered his critics, and I think it is really important to understand what the people who actually live in this country and have to deal with those problems think about the progressives in the United States of America who thumb their nose at this tough on crime approach, despite its obvious necessariness and the fact that it's obviously working. But before we get into that, this video is sponsored, so let me toss it to the sponsor, then we'll bring it back over here and we'll talk about it on the other side. Silver's value typically relied on its aesthetic appeal and its rarity, but the thing is, silver's absolutely crucial to today's economy, and that might surprise you. New technology like solar panels and all kinds of different things use silver as a component. This is an additional reason why having some precious metals, specifically silver, in your IRA is a good idea moving forward. And if you start a qualifying IRA this month, you will be gifted an American Eagle 1-ounce silver coin. It comes in this super awesome display case. It is a great memento, and it helps you realize that you're holding something real for retirement in the future. So go over to noblegoldinvestments.com or call them at 877-646-5347. Talk to an expert. That's noblegoldinvestments.com, noblegoldinvestments.com. So this video comes from the Twitter account of El Salvadorian President Nayib Bukele, who is giving an answer to all the NGOs that have been complaining about his alleged human rights violations that have specifically been sparked not by the mass arrest video, but by this video of people who are already convicted being transferred to the super prison that they're building. And I really think, and by the way, I have verified the translation of this, even though it comes directly from the president's Twitter account on its own, independently, that his answer is absolutely crucial. So let me play that for you.
¿De dónde les nació ese amor repentino por El Salvador? Si hasta hace poco no sabían a dónde quedaba en el mapa.
Where did this sudden love for El Salvador come from? Up until recently, you could barely find it on a map.
De repente, en estos 3 años han surgido todas las preocupaciones. ¿Y antes dónde estaban?
All of a sudden, in these last 3 years, you've suddenly become concerned. Where were you before?
¿Dónde estaban cuando estos partidos de la esquina reclutaban niños y los obligaban a matar? Ahí están. Arena, el FMLN. Reclutaban niños para mandarlos a matar.
Where were you when those parties in the back corner were recruiting children and forcing them to kill? They are right there. Arena and FLNM recruited children and sent them to kill.
Nosotros les damos computadoras y laptops. Ellos los reclutaban para mandarlos a matar. ¿A dónde estaban?
We are giving children computers and laptops. They recruited children and sent them to kill. Where were you then?
El Salvador es un país libre, soberano e independiente. Tomamos nuestras propias decisiones.
El Salvador is a free and independent country. We make our own decisions.
Eso lo tiene que tener claro el mundo entero. Queremos tener buenas relaciones con otros países. Queremos ser aliados, amigos, socios.
Let this be clear to the world over. We want to be allies, friends, partners.
Pero de verdad, amigos, aliados, socios. Pero no colonia.
But truly, allies, friends, partners. He doesn't want to be a colony.
Ni patio trasero, ni patio delantero, como le quieren decir ahora.
He doesn't want to be anybody's backyard or anyone's front yard, as they're being described by all these NGOs. And essentially, this is a reference to a lot of the press coverage that is saying that all these human rights violations are happening in the United States backyard. He's like, we're not your backyard. We're a sovereign country. Treat us with some damn respect.
Nuestras puertas están abiertas de par en par. Pero no permitiremos que nos vengan a decir qué hacer.
It says our doors are wide open, but we're not going to let these people tell us what to do. And essentially, this is an assertion of independence. This is not backing down one bit. He is backed by the people in this regard. Again, 92% approval rating, which is not controversial by any stretch for his policies where he's cracking down on the gang members. And again, during the El Salvadorian Civil War, 80% of the soldiers that were used by the left-wing political party were under the age of 18. And these parties, by the way, are still allowed to function in El Salvador. They don't get any scorn or any criticism because, of course, leftism is always excusing for everything, including using child soldiers, very similarly to the way that the gangs do. But all of a sudden, you crack down on the gangs, you crack down on the most violent people, you end up building a prison, and you actually try to incarcerate these horrible people that need to be removed from society, and then there's all these issues. And to be clear, incarceration is exactly what El Salvador is going for. They've essentially tripled the size of their prison population, which was at about 36,000 before, and is now upwards of 100,000. And this is largely due to the fact that they had an under-incarceration program. Now, I've gone over multiple different times how people cite studies in the United States of America that say that incarceration doesn't work, except all those studies, as I discussed in my previous video, show that incarceration doesn't continue to yield good, positive crime reduction results after a certain point. But once you're below the threshold of where you need to have people locked up, yes, incarceration will reduce criminality. And El Salvador, having the highest murder rate in the world, was well below that with only 36,000 people in prison. Since they've locked up upwards of 100,000 people, they are again safer than most American cities, and it is very refreshing to see a Latin American leader buck all these organizations that try to assert control on them by providing this so-called humanitarian aid that continually makes these people dependent on foreign actors' charity in order to function. He's not having it. He says, we're independent. He has the people behind him on this issue, and the proof in the pudding is in the taste, and it tastes pretty damn good in El Salvador right now.
Since then, about 64,000 suspects have been arrested. Murder reports fell about 57% last year.
Now, since my last video, I actually had a bunch of different people reach out to me about the situation in El Salvador, both people who fled the country and some people who are still in the nation, and they explained to me some things that I didn't quite understand, which was the fact that people in El Salvador, in general, according to these people, do not get tattoos unless they're in a gang, because it's so dangerous having a tattoo, because it's widely viewed as a gang symbol, that getting one without being in such a gang could ultimately end up resulting in you being killed. So when you see massive videos of all of these people tatted up out the wazoo, make no mistake, these are hardcore gang members, because again, everyday El Salvadorians know that this essentially puts a target on your back if you're not affiliated in a gang. And again, I said it before and I'll say it again, that essentially what is going on in El Salvador is not a regular policing or criminal justice issue. They're essentially at war with a militant group that is running its own parallel economy that is victimizing many of the citizens of the nation. So that is why the harsh measures are being implemented. But even with that, I still said I want to see these people ultimately tried and convicted at some point for their crimes, because I believe in due process, but I understand and give the caveat that El Salvadorian situation is something that the American people have never had to face. The worst of the mafia did not kill 1/10 of 1% of the American population in a single year, and that's right around where El Salvador was for about 3 years in a row. This is a country with 2 million people less than the city of New York, who have had well over 10 times the amount of murders any given year in the city of New York in their nation. It's insane, and obviously when the gangs get this much of a foothold, when desperate times become this desperate, there are going to be some desperate measures. Now, because in my last video, I made fun of TJ Kirk, the amazing atheist's take on this issue, which was absolutely terrible, when I saw this video on Twitter, I ended up quote tweeting it and taking a shot at TJ and his arrest poverty kind of solution, highlighting the fact that this guy is standing by what he does. His arguments are essentially unbeatable in this regard, and making fun of TJ for saying that they should just focus on arresting poverty. And again, if only we had a description of what poverty was wearing, maybe we could send out a patrol car and find her and then arrest her. But TJ's response really shows the disconnection between the topic at hand and the major left-wing faction in the United States of America. Poverty is wearing food deserts, crumbling infrastructure, antagonistic over-policing, and despair. Go get 'em, champ. Now, if you think maybe I'm leaving out some aspect of the conversation, I assure you that is not the case. That is a direct response to my poking fun at him about the president of El Salvador's response to other people in other countries who don't understand the context of their nation and their policies, taking pot shots at them because it doesn't fit their ideal worldview. The guy brought up food deserts, grocery stores closing in the United States of America in certain areas. And of course, he was wrong about food deserts because, as we discussed on this channel multiple different times, big box grocers make money because they sell you a lot of volume at low profit margins. And the reason why there are so-called food deserts, which in reality are just grocery store no-go zones, because in these places you can buy fresh produce and all kinds of things from stands and all that for more money, is because there's higher theft in certain areas in the United States of America, and even two areas that have the same level of poverty, you could determine whether or not one is going to be a so-called food desert or not, based on the character of the people, aka the level of retail theft in that area. Low retail theft means you're going to have grocery stores, even if you have a population disadvantage and an income disadvantage. High retail theft means you're not going to have these big grocery stores. It's just a fact. So I don't know what this has to do with anything, but obviously TJ wanted to talk about how poverty and crumbling infrastructure, and geez, God, I mean, El Salvador's biggest problem must be that they don't have enough Walmarts in El Salvador because of the food deserts, because oh my God, corporations are so bad. That's definitely the issue. It's not the gang members killing 1/10 of 1% of the population in a single year, and that happening essentially for 3 years in a row. No. That's not the issue at hand. We really gotta arrest poverty in El Salvador. Elect those leftists that use child soldiers in the Salvadorian Civil War. I'm sure that will solve all the problems. Forget about the fact that crime spiked dramatically during their tenure. It's really, you really gotta arrest poverty. Now look, I hope El Salvador keeps their foot on the gas pedal in this regard. I hope they prove that a tough on crime approach actually works, and I hope they pass laws that actually free up their economy, open it up for foreign investment, establish simple but hard to repeal rules in their nation, because what we'll find out is the foreign investment will in fact come, and it will prove what we knew all along on this channel, that the crime is what is keeping El Salvador in poverty, not the poverty creating the gang crime, because there are many nations nearby El Salvador that had nowhere near that level of violence. Obviously, they have a better crime control model, and poverty is not the inherent cause of their problems. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you liked the video, show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the El Salvadorian president, telling progressives in the United States of America, essentially, to shut the hell up. Till next time.